G'day and welcome back to my very overgrown garden slash orchard. Today I wanted to talk to you about apples, one of my favourite subjects, and how to choose an apple tree for your garden. Most people haven't got as much room as I have, and they might not be able to fit in 40 odd different varieties of apple, which I have slightly crazily done. But even if you've only got room for one apple tree, and you don't need that much room because you can get them on dwarfing rootstocks so they stay tiny if that's all you have room for. If you've only got room for one or two, which ones do you choose? It's a pretty tough choice because there's this amazing range of heritage varieties, literally thousands of different varieties available. It's a bit bewildering, and I got carried away with the catalogue when I was ordering, which is why I've ended up with so many. So I can't make up my mind. Anyway, I thought it would be fun to zip back in time to July, the middle of summer, when the first apple trees start to fruit, and show you some of the varieties I've got, which might give you some inspiration as to which apple tree you might try to grow in your garden. So come with me back to, it's the 1st of November now. I wish I had a time machine and I could go back to the end of July, but at least I can show you what it was like. This is the first tree of the year to produce ripe dessert apples. Lord Lambourne's the variety. Really beautiful apples. They're hard to spot amongst the undergrowth, but let's fight our way in. Look at this. Gorgeous apples. Gorgeous to look at least. It's a good crop. I have to confess, they're not the tastiest of apples. They're a little bit pappy. Let's try one. It is a beaut to look at, but so. I mean, it's nice to have your own apples at this time of the year. So I'm not going to complain, but it's not going to win any prizes, I'm afraid. Just a bit too soft. Perfectly edible, but there's much better to come, thankfully. Next up, we've got Beauty of Bath. Looks quite similar to Lord Lambourne, actually. So we're now into the last week of July, and these are ready and ripe for eating. Another gorgeous apple to look at. Let's see what they're like. Slight improvement on Lord Lambourne. Really juicy, quite sweet, but texture still lets it down a bit. But not my favourite apple. They're a bit soft. As I say, there's much better to come. Ah, look, now we're talking. We're on to the first day of August, and this is an apple tree called Katy, which is good for, it's a good dessert apple, good for cider, good for juice. Good all-rounder really, and much better eating than Lord Lambourne or Beauty of Bath. Look at the crop too. Hundreds of them. Beautiful apples, really crunchy, much better texture, none of that pappiness that the previous two had. Just a really nice, sweet, crunchy apple. Fairly straightforward flavours, no kind of, not particularly aromatic or anything. But, well, not quite a perfect apple, but a little blemish there, but fantastic eating. First good apple of the year in my books, and we're still in the middle of summer. Oh, look at this. We're still on the 1st of August. This is Devonshire Quarrenden. Quite a good tree now. I planted this about 8-9 years ago, and it's quite an unusual variety. You may never have heard of them, but they're really nice, sweet, crunchy, beautiful apples. Look at that. What more could you want for in an apple? Really firm. Skin's a bit thicker than the Katy, but lovely, crunchy, sweet. Excuse the aeroplane. One of my favourites. And look how many there are. Next up is a bit of a cheat, if I'm honest. Looks like an apple, but actually this is an Asian pear. Honshu, if I remember, is the variety. These are really interesting. Dead easy to grow. Not many people grow them in the UK, but they're quite happy in the climate here. And I think they're ripe. This one won't come off. Come here. Whoa. They have a slightly textured skin, a bit like a russet apple, and we'll come to those later. But they taste. Much more like a pear, quite aromatic, really sweet, quite soft. Absolutely gorgeous, I have to say. And there's loads of them. Definitely worth considering if you've got room. I think these are fantastic things. Sadly they don't keep very long, you've got to eat them while they're fresh. But damn fine. Okay, what else have we got? Now we're into the first week of September, and this is Discovery. Actually a relatively modern variety. Most of my apples are quite old heritage apples, but Discovery was discovered in the 1940s, if I recall. It's one of the few apples I have which you'd actually find in supermarkets occasionally. Not very common. I mean, supermarkets are hopeless places for apples. They usually only have about 3 or 4 varieties, and it's always the same ones. They do occasionally have Discovery because, unlike most of the early season sweet apples, it does actually keep for a week or two on the shelf, which is a key thing if you're for shopkeepers. Obviously it doesn't matter so much in a garden. Anyway, Discovery is a very nice apple, but like most early season apples, it's not wildly exciting. It's sweet, it's crisp, it's nice, it's good eating, it's good for juice as well, but I can't get very excited about them. That's it. It was pretty good actually. Yum. Okay, let's see what else we can find. Now this is a bit of an unusual apple. These beautiful dark purple ribbed apples. Let me find you a nice one. Look at that. There we go. This is Bloody Ploughman's. It's a really nice, again, pretty early season apple. Sweet and crisp, good for juice. Named supposed, so this is quite an old variety. It's a Scottish apple. It was first described in 1880, and the name Bloody Ploughman supposedly comes from its origin, which is that a ploughman was scrumping apples illegally on some Scottish estate, and he was shot dead by a gamekeeper, and his body, complete with a bag of apples, was delivered back to his wife, who in disgust threw the apples into the garden, and one of the apples, the pips in one of the apples, produced a tree which was a Bloody Ploughman's. At least it seems a bit unlikely, doesn't it? Anyway, that's the story. Really nice. It's a good variety if you live in the north of the UK. It's doing pretty well in my garden in the south, but it's It's a tough apple that can cope with much more harsh conditions than I have here. I'm choking on the apple. And rather lovely if you've got room. Squeeze some in. Okay, next. This is a very unusual apple. This is Pitmaston pineapple. And this tree has grown to quite an impressive size in the 10 years since I planted it. And look, it's covered in apples. They're not the most stunning apples. They're quite small and greeny yellow. Very different to everything we've seen so far. Not the most beautiful, it must be admitted, but they are delicious. Really super sweet. Oh, so get down so I can see you. But also, they taste a bit of pineapple. And honey and something else. Really interesting, much more flavoursome than most of the early season apples. And because they're small, you can eat lots of them. Perfect for a kid's lunchbox or whatever. Really lovely, interesting, novel apple to grow, and I've got lots to eat. Yum. Oh, forgot to say, this is quite an ancient variety. This was first described in 1780, so it's been around a while. Now for something a bit different. This is Egremont Russet. I've got several russet apples in my garden. This is the best known of the russets. Russet apples are unusual, not everyone's cup of tea. I think they're delicious, but they have a skin that's, I mean, most apples have a smooth, shiny skin. These have a skin that's kind of more or less like sandpaper, really. It's very kind of rough to the touch and to the bite as well. They're quite different to most commercial apples. They're relatively dry. They're not a sort of explosion of juice that you get from most of the dessert apples in the supermarket. And almost a nutty flavour, a much more dense flesh than most apples. I absolutely love them. Also, they're sort of slightly scented and a more complex flavour altogether. Hint of melons or something. Anyway, absolutely lovely. One of my favourite apples at this time of year. Highly recommended. It's a fairly old variety. It's a Victorian apple. It's thought to have been developed by the Earl of Egremont, who lived at Petworth House in West Sussex in 1882, I think it was. There you go. Egremont Russet. These beauties are Spartans. Glorious purple apples. Whoa. If you polish them up, they look absolutely beautiful. Look at that. What a fantastic apple. They've got lovely crisp white flesh as well. Really sweet. Brilliant for children, they absolutely love them. Kind of classic, crunchy, sweet apple. Not amazingly complex flavours, but fantastic. It's actually a variety that was developed in British Columbia in 1936. So I think it's the only North American apple variety I've got, but well worth growing. Very heavy cropping too, as you can see. Why they're called Spartans, I've no idea. They're not really much like fearsome Greek warriors, but they are very nice apples. Adam's Pearmains. This is a Victorian variety, registered by a Mr. Adams, strangely enough, in 1826. A lovely kind of autumnal russety, reddish orangey colour with these characteristic little kind of yellowish spots are called lenticels, I think. It's quite it's a drier apple than many. A bit like a russet in that sense, and quite kind of nutty. Quite different to most of your supermarket apples. Well worth a try. And a lovely handsome tree to boot. Peasgood Nonsuch. Sorry, Peasgood's Nonsuch. I do love some of the crazy names that we've given to fruit varieties. This is the first cooker of the year. You can eat them. I think they're really nice, but you need to share them because they're enormous. Actually, one of the biggest apples you can grow. One of these will make a pie on its own. When you cook them, they go to a lovely kind of frothy puree rather than keeping their shape, which for some dishes is fantastic. Not for you wouldn't want to use it for a kind of posh tart with slices of apple on the top, but fantastic for a crumble. Yeah, so great eater, giant apple, discovered by Emma Peasgood, hence the name Peasgood's. Well, I don't know where the Nonsuch comes from, but anyway, in 1856. I have a real fondness for these. Highly recommended. Now it's the 3rd of October, and got a couple of modern apple varieties to show you today. And this is a beaut. This is a modern variety developed in Kent in about 2000, so it's the newest variety I've got in my garden. It's called Jumbo, and it has really big apples. Beautiful. It's primarily a cooker, but they're easily sweet enough to eat. If you thin the apples out a little bit, you can get individual apples of more than a pound, 400 odd grams. They're absolute whoppers. But as you can see, the crop is huge this year, so they're not quite so big, but nonetheless, superb apples. So great for cooking, quite sweet, you don't really need to add any sugar. And ripe enough to eat, although like the Peasgoods, you probably wouldn't want to eat a whole one. But, really are one of my favourite apples. I have to say, if I had to pick just one apple, I'd be highly tempted to go for these. They're really versatile. They store well as well. You can keep them right through until April. Best to pick them before they're absolutely ripe and before they've got any kind of blemishes, and store them somewhere cool and with plenty of air movement, and you'll have apples all winter long. So this is the other modern variety I mentioned, red Falstaff, also developed in Kent in about 1980, so it's only 40 odd years old. It's a really good cropper. It's a dessert apple, has these lovely, it's a cross between Golden Delicious, which I'm not a big fan of, and James Grieve. Has these colourful apples. They're sort of mostly red with a bit of yellow on them. I do love a good apple. It should be another contender if you only had room for one apple tree. You could do worse than to have one of these. As I say, it crops every year. Doesn't keep as well as a jumbo, partly because the apples are smaller. But good for juice and delicious just to eat. Small enough that you can actually eat a whole one without too much trouble. So, red Falstaff. These are not the most amazing apples you've ever seen. This is Rosemary Russet. So we had Egremont Russet that ripens earlier in the summer. We're now in the middle of October and these are just becoming ripe. They're quite different to Egremont Russet, I have to say. They're much sharper. There's no commercial apple you'll find in the supermarkets that's sold as a dessert apple that's anywhere near as sharp as these, but I really like them. You've got to like a bit of acid in your fruit to enjoy them, but delicious, really mouth-watering. They're kind of semi-russeted, not rough textured all over. This is a variety developed in the Victorian era in Essex somewhere. I don't know any more history than that, but I've heard it described as a connoisseur's apple. It's certainly not for everyone, but if you like a really sharp apple, I think they're delicious and just perfect in late October. This is a lovely old Bramley's seedling, covered in lichens. Look at this, it's absolutely beautiful. The old twigs are encrusted. I'll try and snap one off for you. Probably not that interested in lichens, but I think they're really cool. There's some better ones here. Look at this. Anyway, back to the apples. Interesting history. Bramley's seedling, they've become one of the most widely sold apples in the world as they're cooking apples. Although they do make great juice. And if you leave them till this time of year, they're sweet enough to eat as dessert apples. But the first one was grown in 1809. It was planted by a girl called Mary Ann Brailsford in a garden in Nottingham. And that tree is still alive. It fell over once but has sprouted back up again. So the original Bramley's seedling still exists. Not named after Mary Ann though. It was the person who bought the house next was a Mr. Bramley's, and he insisted on having the fruit named after him. Mene. Anyway, they're beautiful apples. They start out green, and the ones you see in the shops are always green, but if you leave them on the tree, they'll ripen to this lovely half red kind of coloration. Beautiful apples, fantastic for cooking. Of course, they're very widely available, but nothing beats homegrown if you ask me. This gorgeous beast is Newton Wonder. It's a cooking apple, discovered in the 1870s, rather bizarrely, there was a seedling growing in the damp thatch of an old pub roof in a place called King's Newton in Derbyshire, which is obviously where the name comes from. Anyway, it's a very prolific apple tree, grows fast, very vigorous, produces lots of fruit, which are fabulous for cooking or juicing. Bit sour for eating straight. Start out green and then they turn this really beautiful flushed red as they get really ripe and juicy. Delicious. This might not look it, but this is something special. Very exciting. This is an apple tree called Pendu Platt. It's a really old variety, the oldest I've got by far. These were very popular in France in the 1600s. But it's widely believed that these were grown by the Romans. And that's really, if it's true, is an amazing thought, because apple trees are cultivated by grafting. So this tree we're looking at was grafted onto a rootstock. So there's a little cutting taken from an older tree, put onto young roots. And that's repeated over and over again. So actually, every Pendu Platt, every Bramley, every Katy or whatever, they're all genetically identical to one another. They are basically the same plant. So potentially, this exact plant, genetically identical, was eaten by Julius Caesar, maybe. Anyway, it's a dessert apple, really late season. They recommend picking them in October, and then they'll store for a couple of months at least. And you can see they're in fine fettle at this time of year. Let me tilt the camera around. Bear with me. So it's also said, rather oddly, that they're best eaten by cutting them with a knife rather than biting them. I've really no idea if that's true, but I thought I'd put it to the test. So well, let's bite one first. Pretty damn good, actually. Bit pineapple-y, really aromatic, lovely apple, really lovely. Tastes exactly the same. So much for that theory. But anyway, it's a very fine apple. Good for keeping, eating right through until January or February. Fabulous tree and amazing bit of history. So that was called Pendu Platt. I thought you might be interested to see a cider apple. So this is Dabinet, which lots of cider apples produce small fruits but huge numbers of them, and you can see this tree is absolutely dripping. Pretty little apples, but absolutely disgusting to eat. Because this is a bitter sharp, which is a type of cider apple it's both bitter and acidic at the same time. There's no fun to be had in eating these. Makes a delicious cider, but definitely not for direct human consumption. Anyway, rather a pretty apple. Dabinet. Braeburn. It's one of the smallest apple trees I've got. It's on a dwarfing rootstock. And look, it's absolutely smothered in apples. It's literally fallen over under the weight of its fruit, but it fruits prolifically every year. Really reliable. Beautiful apples. So we're now in the last week of October. These are really good keepers, one of the best dessert apples for storage. It's actually a variety that was developed in New Zealand on Braeburn farm, hence the name, in the 1950s. It's not that old, and it's one of the few varieties I grow that are also, you can buy in the shops sometimes, but don't hold that against it. It's a really nice tasty apple, good for storage, great dessert apple, pretty robust. It seems to thrive in more or less any conditions, well worth considering as an option. Braeburn. And finally, the last apple of the year, at least for this video. This is Darcy Spice, which is a really old apple. Came from Colchester in the 1700s. It's the last apple to ripen of the year, at least in my garden. You normally pick these in early November, and you can hang them in sacks on the tree as an easy way of storage. That's how they often used to do it. It's not quite ready to eat, but still, it's already pretty good. Famously interesting apples to eat, slightly russeted, really rich, kind of cinnamony. Some people say they taste like mince pies. I think that was probably stretching it a bit, but an absolutely unique apple, really interesting. Maybe not everyone's cup of tea. They're not all that beautiful, are they? but they really, if you've got room, I couldn't recommend them enough, just for something completely different. You'll never get an apple like this in the shops. So why not, just to wrap up, if you can possibly squeeze one in, plant an apple tree. Take your pick as to which one to plant, or plant 45 if you've got room like me. You don't actually need that much room, because you can grow them on dwarfing rootstocks, and some keep really tiny, just 2 or 3 feet tall. You can grow them in a pot on a patio even. So, and obviously they're great to eat, to make all sorts of appley desserts out of, to make cider and juice from. But they're also great for wildlife. The blossom is fab for pollinators in the spring. The apples, the windfalls, are great for birds and other wildlife to nibble on in the autumn to fatten up for winter. All sorts of insects live on and in apple trees. There was a study of a an old orchard in the West Country that found, if I remember, more than 450 different species of insect living on and around these old apple trees. So a real biodiversity hotspot, as well as being fabulous for food. Winds all round. Give it a go. I forgot to say two things. The autumn and winter is the cheapest time to plant apple trees because you can buy them bare rooted. There are several great companies I've bought from over the years in the post. Keeper's Nursery is good. Walcott Organic Nursery do organic fruit trees, or there's Adam's Apples, great name. All of them really reliable in my experience, and they can ship you relatively cheap trees. They're not in a pot or anything, you have to plant them straight away. But they can only do that in the autumn and winter when the trees are dormant. But that's where all of my trees came from, and I didn't lose a single one when I planted them. Secondly, don't forget to subscribe. Bye.